Holding. We have about 40 minutes remaining in this built-in hold. The countdown will resume at 3:40 a.m. at the T-minus 3 hour mark. We're now just about 4 hours away from the opening of today's launch window for Mission 61C, the 7th flight for the Orbiter Columbia, and the 24th launch for the Space Transportation System. The launch window opens at 7 a.m. Eastern Time and closes at 7:49 a.m. Eastern. The weather outlook for launch time this morning is improving. The lower cloud deck level is thinning and is predicted to be scattered at 3,500 feet, broken at 8,000 feet, broken at 25,000 feet. The surface winds are expected to be coming out of the north at 7 knots, and visibility will be 7 miles. Temperature is expected to be about 54 degrees. The 61C flight crew has been awakened, and we will be joining them shortly for their breakfast in about 5 or 10 minutes. The commander for this mission is Robert Gibson. The pilot is Charles Bolden. The 3 mission specialists are George Pinky Nelson, Stephen Hawley, and Franklin Chang-Diaz. 2 payload specialists are Robert Cenker of RCA and Florida U.S. Representative Bill Nelson. Countdown is running very smoothly at this time, and we expect no problems to prevent us from an on-time liftoff at 7 a.m. The external tank has been filled with its flight load of liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen propellant, and the ice debris inspection team has been making its routine inspection of the external tank the past 30 to 45 minutes. They are just about through here, and they are checking to see if any ice has formed on the external tank during the tanking process, and also looking for any debris in the launch area. The astronaut support personnel are preparing Columbia's cockpit for the crew's entry. Crew is scheduled to depart for Launch Pad 39A at 4:10 a.m. Eastern Time this morning, and are scheduled to enter into Columbia's crew cockpit at about 4:45 this morning. Columbia will be launched into a 201-mile circular orbit, inclined 28.5 degrees to the equator, for its 5-day mission. During the mission, the crew will deploy RCA's SATCOM K1 communications satellite, the second in a series of 3, with its PAM D2 upper stage. SATCOM K2 was deployed on Flight 61B just last month. Also on board Columbia in the payload bay are the Material Science Laboratory, the first hitchhiker payload, the RCA infrared imaging experiment, and 13 getaway special experiments in specialized canisters, 12 of which are mounted on a special getaway special bridge, which is attached to the payload bay. The other canister is attached to the wall of the orbiter's payload bay. This will be the first KSC landing since Mission 51D on April 19th of this year, when Discovery's right main landing gear tire experienced a blowout. Shuttle managers then decided to introduce modifications permitting nose-wheel steering capability on the orbiters. That system was verified with Challenger at the conclusion of Mission 61A at Edwards Air Force Base, California. Landing will come on Flight Day 6 at Kennedy Space Center on Orbit 80, which would be December 23rd at about 7:13 a.m. Eastern. A report from the ice debris inspection team. They are now getting ready to come back to the Launch Control Center. They will make a report to shuttle managers concerning what they saw. during their inspection. Columbia's last flight was STS-9, launched November 28, 1983. After that flight, hundreds of modifications were made to Columbia during its 18-month visit at the Rockwell International Shuttle Manufacturing Plant in Palmdale, California. One modification includes the installation of a cylindrical housing atop the vertical stabilizer, which contains the Shuttle Infrared Lee-Side Temperature Sensing Experiment called SILT. This experiment will obtain high-resolution infrared images of the upper surfaces of Columbia's port wing and fuselage as the orbiter re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. Another less obvious change to Columbia is a nose cap to house the Shuttle Entry Air Data System experiment called SEEDS. This involves a number of pressure sensors inside the nose cap to provide aerodynamic flight characteristics during re-entry. Another modification was made to accommodate the Shuttle Upper Atmosphere Mass Spectrometer experiment called SUMS. Inside the nose wheel well, SUMS will sample air at Columbia's surface through a small hole to measure the number of molecules at various gas species. This data, combined with vehicle motion information, will allow determination of orbiter aerodynamic characteristics at altitudes where the atmosphere is extremely thin. The crew member at their breakfast. On the left there is RCA Robert Cenker and pilot Charles Bolden and George Pinky Nelson and Commander Robert Gibson in the center. And there is RCA Payload Specialist Robert Cenker. He's making his first flight, and pilot Charles Bolden making his first flight also. And George Pinky Nelson, he's making his second trip into space. And Commander Hoot Gibson, who is also making his second trip. And Mission Specialist Stephen Hawley making his second trip. And there's Mission Specialist Franklin Chang-Diaz. He's making his first trip. And U.S. Representative Bill Nelson, also making his first trip into space. And there is Columbia on Launch Pad 39A. Crew will be departing for Launch Pad 39A at about 10 minutes after 4 this morning. Countdown is proceeding smoothly at this time, and we expect that we will have an on-time liftoff at 7 a.m. this morning. We do have a COLA this morning, a collision avoidance, and that is an opportunity where, not an opportunity, but a position where we cannot launch to avoid a collision with another orbiting spacecraft. And that COLA begins at 7:48 and lasts until 7:50. So that shortens our launch window by about 2 minutes. And landing is expected to come on December 24th at 7:13 a.m. So our COLA for this morning begins at 7:48 and lasts to 7:50, so that makes our launch window from 7 o'clock until about 7:48 this morning. Everything's going smoothly in the countdown at this time. Countdown is scheduled to pick up in about 25 minutes. T-minus 3 hours and holding. This is Shuttle Launch Control. Window for Mission 61C. The window opens at 7 a.m. and extends until 7:48. That means if we were unable, for some reason, to launch as planned at 7 a.m., we could launch anytime up to 7:48 this morning. If a situation occurs which would prevent a launch during that time, we would have to drain the liquid propellant from the external tank and try again tomorrow. All is continuing to go smoothly with the countdown. The external tank has been filled with its flight load of liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen and is continuously being replenished with those propellants as they boil off. We are tracking no technical problems at this point. And in just a few minutes, the Landing and Recovery Director will be making various communication checks with his personnel stationed at the KSC runway and at contingency landing sites. The transatlantic abort site for this mission this morning is Dakar, Senegal, and the weather is acceptable at that location. Weather conditions are improving here at Kennedy Space Center for a launch this morning. The lower cloud deck at the 3,500-foot level is thinning out and also drying. There is another cloud deck at 8,000 feet. It's broken, and at 25,000 feet, that level is also broken. Surface winds are coming out of the north at 7 knots, and the visibility is 7 miles. Flight crew members are scheduled to be departing the operations and checkout building in less than 10 minutes. They will be boarding the traditional crew van and will be en route to the launch pad about 10 minutes after 4 this morning. They're scheduled to arrive at the White Room at Launch Pad 39A at about 4:35 a.m. and will begin entering into Columbia's cockpit at about 4:45 a.m. Countdown clock is now at T-minus 2 hours, 37 minutes, 10 seconds, and counting. This is Shuttle Launch Control. They're on the 3rd floor of the Operations and Checkout Building in the crew quarters, and there's pilot Charles Bolden, Representative Bill Nelson.
Thank you, sir.
Pinky Nelson, RCA Payload Specialist Bob Cenker, and Mission Specialist Chang-Diaz, and the rest of the astronaut support people. And there is the van used to transport the crew members to Launch Pad 39A. And the crew members are waving to personnel. There's Commander Gibson, Mission Specialist Stephen Hawley, Pinky Nelson, and Payload Specialist Robert Cenker, and Bill Nelson, pilot Charles Bolden, and veteran astronaut John Young. And they're all aboard the astronaut van. They are led by KSC security escort to Launch Pad 39A. And they're now on their way to Launch Pad 39A. They're scheduled to arrive the White Room at about 4:35 and enter into the orbiter's cockpit in about 35 minutes here. Everything continues to go smoothly in this morning's countdown to launch the Space Shuttle Columbia for the first time since 1983. and we are tracking no technical difficulties that would prevent us from an on-time liftoff this morning at 7 a.m. Launch window extends until 7:48. We have a collision avoidance timeline, and that starts at 7:48 and lasts until 7:50. That is to avoid a collision with the Soviet Salyut space station. T-minus 2 hours.
Astronaut John Young will be flying weather reconnaissance this morning to give us an update later on what things look like from a pilot's viewpoint. John will be up for nearly an hour in a T-38, and then a little bit later we'll be returning to the skies in the shuttle train aircraft and flying approaches, landing approaches in the shuttle train aircraft to make certain that weather conditions are favorable for today's launch. The 7 members of the astronaut crew are up on the crew access arm at this time, and waiting their go to enter the white room and begin the egress procedures. This is Shuttle Launch Control, T-minus 2 hours, 3 minutes, and counting. The flight crew from Mission 61C has arrived in the flight room where they have been greeted by some of Santa's helpers. At least that's the costume they're wearing today. The closeout crew in a very festive holiday mood greeted the arriving Commander Gibson and Mission Payload Specialist Bill Nelson and pilot Charlie Bolden with a helmet that had some reindeer antlers on it. And all conditions are go for the crew to begin their entry into the orbiter shortly. In fact, everything has proceeded very smoothly through the night with the countdown, and we have no technical problems at this time. The only concern this morning is weather, and it appears that with our window of 48 minutes, we should be able to find an opportunity to launch, and are hopeful that we'll be able to launch right on time at 7 a.m. this morning. And Commander Gibson and pilot Bolden are putting on their integrated egress harnesses at this time. The harness serves a variety of purposes, primarily as part of the emergency egress system to help the crew out of the vehicle. A device which connects to the harness allows the astronaut to get out of the vehicle through either the side hatch or through the overhead escape panels. And the descent device allows each crew member to lower himself to the ground at a controlled rate of descent. The harness also contains a life vest, which provides 24 hours of flotation capability for the astronaut. There's an inflatable pillow located on the back of the harness, and can be adjusted by each astronaut to his own personal comfort by using a small red bulb located in the front. The astronaut will be putting on their helmets And what you see is a nylon cover. There's the antlers going back on. It's interesting to note that the return of Columbia is for the early morning of Christmas Eve. Presently have a prediction that the orbiter will be visible as it streaks across the sky over Kennedy just moments after, just a short time after the deorbit burn. Once again, the nylon covers put on the face shields will keep them from being scratched up while the astronauts climb into the vehicle. The cover will be removed by astronaut Bill Shepard before he leaves the crew module. The helmets provide the crew members with face protection and reduces light and sound levels in the crew module and provides communications capabilities. The enclosed environment of the helmet cuts down on the level of noise encountered during the launch and allows intelligible air-to-ground communication.
And then we'll be able to pick up on,
the helmet contains a microphone, earphones, and a connector and cable for interfacing with the communications panel in the orbiter. University and a degree in law from the University of Virginia. A U.S. Army captain, he served in the reserves from 1965 to 1971 and was on active duty from 1968 to 1970. In 1972, he was elected to the Florida legislature and served 6 years until his election to Congress. He was honored by the Florida JCs as one of the 5 outstanding young men of Florida and was nominated as the most valuable member of the Florida House of Representatives. And Congressman Nelson being assisted into the orbiter. All is continuing to go very well here in the firing room at the Launch Control Center at minus 1 hour, 51 minutes, and 30 seconds. We've completed the first motion signal test.
Okay, I'm CDO.com. Once you get a contact with him, I think he can do some CRPLT, can do your keystroke. Okay, copy that.
This is a test which simulates liftoff of the shuttle. And that was sent to Houston and to the range safety officer. The signal also starts the onboard clock that keeps mission elapsed time for the crew. Also here in the firing room, the ground launch sequencer program has been started in the integration console. Engineers will now be setting up the specific tables in the launch processing system that the ground launch sequencer will use as its guidelines to either let the countdown continue or to call an automatic hold when it assumes control of the countdown at the T-minus 9 minute mark. And astronaut ingress activities are continuing here.
And enter the alternate throttle patch in the pass machine. Okay, is any of your work sequential to what BBS is doing? No, I can put that in right now. And okay, yeah, you have it going then. Okay, I'm going to do that on channel 152. Do I have a QC over there? Yes, sir. How about 454? You need to do that first. Oh, that's what I'm going to do first. Okay, I thought you said 455. Oh, that is true. Okay. No, 455 is the step that I'm going to perform right now. LTD.
Orbiter test conductor and Lockheed test director in progress.
Good morning, LTD. Good to learn, clear, sir.
Morning, sir. Read your name. Thank you.
OTC, PLT, ECOM check, how do you read?
PLT is LTD on Interground 1. Read your last clear. How many?
Read your check, sir. OTC, yeah.
Right up. Roger. If I get the caution and warning checked out of the way with CDR and PLT, then they can do all the dip stuff for you.
Okay, you let that work, and we need the CDR's help as soon as possible.
Okay, I'm going to put a master alarm with parameter 099 about 1 minute.
Okay, copy. ISL HYD, stand by for a master alarm. How do you read me?
And we have another reindeer, make that a mission specialist, about to enter the orbiter Columbia. And that's mission specialist Pinky Nelson.
We'll pick it up. LTD, CDR with a com check. Copy, CDR locked for ZOTC. Okay, thank you, sir. CDR DPS.
Smoothly with the countdown. The external tank propellant loading went very well with no problems, and the tank is now full and in what's considered to be stable replenish mode, where quantities of liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen that vaporize and boil off are being continually replenished to keep the tanks at a stable level.
And again, 106 GPC mode 5 switch to standby. Mode 5 switch is in standby.
Mission specialist Franklin Chang-Diaz will be begin his preparations here shortly for boarding the orbiter. He became a NASA astronaut in 1980. Chang-Diaz graduated from Colegio de la Salle in San Jose, Costa Rica in 1967. He received a BS degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Connecticut and a PhD in applied plasma physics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1977. In addition to his mainline fields of science and engineering, Chang-Diaz worked 2.5 years as house manager in an experimental community residence for deinstitutionalizing chronic mental patients, and was heavily involved as instructor advisor with a rehabilitation program for Hispanic drug abusers in Massachusetts. Activities. Communications and emergency oxygen lines have been routed to them, and each has conducted some preliminary communications checks with Lockheed Test Director Jim Toh and Orbiter Test Conductor Don Weinberg. Rudder pedals and rotational hand controllers have been adjusted for the commander and pilot, and prior to leaving the flight deck, support astronaut Bill Shepard will position switches in the cockpit to the proper configuration for activation of orbital maneuvering system and reaction control system jets.
Oh, that's correct.
Getting the reindeer treatment in the White Room.
This is TG, OTC. I'm about to send an HYD to 161 and we'll pre-work that. Okay, thank you. CDR DPS. DPS. I need to know when the message to set the IPL force light off comes up, please, but don't do that. Okay, I'll call it when it comes up.
Hawley now about to enter the orbiter Columbia. He'll be the flight engineer on the ascent.
Yeah, we completed the RTS so far, and it's step 473, and we'll give you a go on step 479.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Hawley now aboard the orbiter Columbia as the flight crew from mission 61C continue their ingress, activities.
Okay, you have to go on the post-ingress switch to reconnect.
Copy.
487.
RCA Payload Specialist, Robert Cenker.
Yes, sir.
He was born in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, graduated from St. Fidelis College and Seminary in Herman, Pennsylvania. He received a BS and MS degree in aerospace engineering from Pennsylvania State University and an MS degree in electrical engineering from Rutgers. Cenker is a senior staff engineer at RCA Astro-Electronics Division, East Windsor, New Jersey. Much of his career has been devoted to design and development of communication satellites, including RCA Satcoms 1 and 2, the GTE SpaceNet satellite, and the Advanced Series 4000 spacecraft. The first of these satellites, designated RCA Satcom KU Band 1, will be deployed during 61C, and Cenker will perform experiments with an infrared camera developed at RCA's David Sarnoff Research Center in Princeton, New Jersey.
Yes, sir, that's correct. We have that.
The 61C flight crew now aboard their ship, the orbiter Columbia, poised for launch on Kennedy Space Center's Launch Pad 39A. All proceeding well as we move forward towards a 7 a.m. scheduled liftoff. Be the first liftoff for Columbia in more than 2 years. The 7th flight of that orbiter, the first ever to fly, and the 24th in the Space Shuttle program. We are tracking no technical problems at this time. Our only concern this morning remains weather. There is a frontal system approaching Kennedy, which contains some precipitation. It will bring some cloud cover to the area vicinity at about launch time. However, the forecast is encouraging, and an improving trend is expected during the duration of the 48-minute window. All is on schedule for a liftoff at 7, and we are optimistic that weather will cooperate with us this morning, and hopefully we'll be able to lift off right on time. We're at T-minus 1 hour, 35 minutes, 37 seconds and counting. This is Shuttle Launch Control.
Yes, second one, we'll take care of it later. Okay, make it.
All 7 members of the Mission 61C flight crew are now in the shuttle, and the orbiter test conductor is verifying with the orbiter systems engineers that we are ready to close the crew hatch for flight. Before the hatch is closed, closeout crew will remove items not needed for the mission, such things as helmet visor protectors, checklist, and switch guards. Once the hatch is closed and locked in place, several plugs of insulating tile material will be screwed into place.
Okay, attention to firing room, all systems. At this time, we need to verify that we have no constraints for crew module close-up.
Checks of the astronaut communications channel have started between the crew and the firing room, and checks with mission control over the air-to-ground loops will begin shortly. A calibration of the solid rocket booster chamber pressure transducers has started. These transducers measure the pressure in the thrust chamber at the nozzle, and this information is used to tell the orbiter's onboard computers when to jettison the SRBs.
OTC, this is MS3. How are you read?
MS3, OTC, lost clear this morning, and stand by for com check with the LTD.
MS3, LTD, air to ground 1. How copy?
LTD, MS3, you're loud and clear. Good morning.
Launch countdown leading up to the liftoff of Columbia and Mission 61C. We're at minus 1 hour, 26 minutes, 17 seconds and counting. This is Shuttle Launch Control. And counting. Very shortly now, see the support astronaut Bill Shepard will be leaving the crew module.
BS2 for another radio check, please.
Okay, BS2, OTC, you're loud and clear.
Okay, good morning, and thank you.
Okay, good morning to you, sir.
And orbiter test conductor Don Weinberg will soon be giving the closeout crew.
Grant.
Good morning, sir. Merry Christmas to you, too. Thank you.
OTC ASP, ready for astro contact.
And Weinberg will shortly be giving the closeout crew permission to close the hatch for flight. And out at the landing facility, the convoy that would support the shuttle orbiter if it had to return to Kennedy Space Center in an emergency is now being positioned at the shuttle landing facility. The convoy is made up of a number of vehicles, including a purge truck, which flows conditioned air through the vehicle to ensure there is no buildup of toxic vapors, a cooling vehicle which provides freon through the orbiter's freon coolant loops for rejecting heat produced by Columbia's electronic systems, and a special mobile white room truck which is used by the crew to climb out of the orbiter after landing. In the event that we were to have to perform a return to launch site abort today, the designated runway would be runway 33. That would bring the orbiter into Kennedy with a left overhead turn and an approach to the runway from the south, heading north. The convoy personnel wearing special self-contained breathing suits called scape suits would be the first persons on the scene, and they would sniff around the vehicle to make sure that there were no large deposits of hazardous fumes in the vicinity of the vehicle.
I'm clear, PS1. I'm clear, PS2.
Communications checks continuing between the astronaut crew and personnel here in the firing room. All conditions continuing to go smoothly and on target for a 7 a.m. liftoff of the orbiter Columbia. At T-minus 1 hour, 15 minutes, 30 seconds and counting, this is Shuttle Launch Control.
PS2, I'm clear.
Okay, crew, I copy you. Astrocom checks are good. Returning to air to ground 1 at this time.
Throttle downs, it'll go to 75%.
Okay, sir, thanks, copy, Ultra Control.
Roger. OTC, this is Houston Capcom. Air-to-ground voice checks are complete.
Copy that. Thank you very much, flight. OTC DPS. Go DPS to 582. The entry is 0, 0. Copy that. OTC DPS to move 5 step 868. You ready for 869? That's firm. Okay, we'll put that in work. CDR OTC.
OTC, CDR.
Take BFS to Ops 1 for your checklist.
Okay, will do.
The primary ascent software is now in Ops 101, and Commander Gibson will now be taking the backup flight system to the run position and prepare to put it in the same Ops 101 terminal countdown configuration. Minus 17 minutes and 30 seconds. Cross-feed valves between orbital maneuvering and reaction control system propellant tanks should be configured shortly to the launch position.
Ready for the MPS EDM reconfiguration.
Okay, that's gonna work, sir.
All right, thank you.
CPLT. MTS helium reconfig is complete. The RCS cross-feed reconfig is verified and ready to give you the RCS quantities.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, forward, 7777. Left, Niner, 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 Niner. Right, Niner 8 and Niner 8.
Okay, copy that, thank you. OTC, CFCT. No. The fuel cell purges are complete and EPD can adjust the fuel cell loads to 250 to 290 amps. Okay, EPD to copy that. Copies in word. All right, copy.
And we've received word here in the Launch Control Center that the KSC range safety area is clear for launch.
Yeah, step 907, do you have the fill-in data there?
Yes, for System 1, we'll have 100.
Okay.
System 2, 100.
Okay.
System 3, 100.
Okay, copy that, thank you.
We're at minus 12 minutes, 43 seconds and counting. All continuing to go well. Cautious eye on the weather. We're proceeding down to a 10-minute built-in hold at the minus 9-minute mark.
Step 90400. Okay, copy. BVD, OTC. BVD, go ahead. Okay, page 561, will those be not performed? That's
A fuel cell purge has been completed, and the fuel cells, which generate the electrical power for the Columbia in orbit, will be adjusted to take over a greater share of the shuttle's power requirements.
And CMQC 955 is not performed.
Copy that.
And GCME, OTC? Go ahead, sir. Okay, we have a completion of the GBC dump, pick up on step 956. That's complete, sir. Okay, and you also have completed 957, 958, 959.
We're at minus 11 minutes. Orbiter test conductor has been informed that we'll be performing the shuttle main engine valve monitoring program.
Okay.
Hold of this countdown, a 10-minute built-in hold at the minus 9-minute mark. There's a possibility that hold would be extended depending on the evaluation of weather conditions during the period.
Yeah, this is the clock goes at 9 minutes. Why don't you pick up your Dave there, temporary 36.
Well, there.
Okay, and you got some fill-in data there. We can catch that post-launch.
Okay, sir.
Okay. OTC SDE 212, right SDE. Yes, sir. We just want to inform you and the crew that...
And no systems problems of any significance being reported.
As expected.
All the vehicle flight hardware looks to be in good condition for an on-time liftoff. Weather remains the principal concern. Coming up on a built-in hold, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. And we'll be handing over now to the mission commentator at Johnson Space Center for a report on readiness and mission control for this flight.
This is Mission Control, Houston. Flight Director Gary Cohen and members of the Ascent Control Team have been on console here in the Mission Control Center since 2 o'clock this morning, monitoring the countdown and the status of vehicle systems. Controllers will be alert to issues which might affect their actions during the ascent and on-orbit phases of Mission 61C. The team's been pleased to see what is an apparently healthy vehicle and a nominal countdown. This team will remain on duty in the Mission Control Center through the orbital insertion period and the early stages of on-orbit operations. Looking forward to a continued smooth countdown and nominal ascent phase. This is Mission Control, Houston.
And back here at Kennedy Space Center, the Columbia and its crew. Aboard Columbia is the RCA SATCOM communications satellite, scheduled to be deployed from Columbia at 4:32 this afternoon. Also aboard is the Material Science Lab, another package of experiments known as the Hitchhiker 1 payload, an RCA infrared camera that will be used for Earth studies and evaluation of the shuttle cargo bay environment, and a group of 13 getaway special canisters, which are the small self-contained payloads, which are sponsored and funded by a variety of organizations. Stored in Columbia's middeck are additional experiments to study Halley's Comet and experiments to perform research on the effects of spaceflight on stored blood. Now, Launch Director Gene Thomas has informed the launch team here in the firing room that we will be holding at the T-minus 9-minute mark for an indefinite period beyond the planned 10 minutes, awaiting for a clearing of the weather. We have at this time weather astronaut John Young continuing to provide us with updates. The principal interest at this time is to permit time for daylight to occur to provide pilot John Young with a little bit better visibility and opportunity to evaluate accurately the situation of the weather over the shuttle landing facility. That, of course, is always a critical parameter based on the remote possibility that the ship would have to return to Kennedy for a return to launch site abort. Even though that possibility is remote, a good deal of caution is always exercised in ensuring that the pilots would be able to see the runway clearly on their return if that were necessary. Our nominal liftoff time of 7 a.m. Would have come before sunrise, and once again the decision has been made, since we have a 48-minute window, to sit at the 9-minute hold for a little while, allow daylight to break, and give John Young the best opportunity to evaluate weather. At T-minus 9 minutes and holding, this is Shuttle Launch Control. 9 minutes in holding. We're continuing to evaluate the weather situation at this time. It remains unclear as to how long we'll need to remain in this hold. If indeed the weather situation will clear up sufficiently to permit us liftoff today. Much of that determination rests with the weather pilot, John Young. He's presently airborne and flying continual passes at the shuttle landing facility to determine the precise conditions that might be expected in the event of a return to launch site abort. We do have a cloud ceiling. There are some generally encouraging conditions both to the south and to the west of the Kennedy Space Center area. We are hopeful that if we begin to get some clearing, the forecast is that trend would continue. We'll be looking at real-time weather observations as long as we continue in this mode of holding at the -9 minute mark. Everything continues to go well as far as the vehicle is concerned, and all systems appear go and ready to support liftoff when the weather permits. We'll have several major milestones remaining between now and launch when the count is resumed. When we come out of the hold, the ground launch sequencer, which is the master computer program running in the integration console, will take over command. And we interrupted commentary to listen to Launch Director Gene Thomas inform the flight crew aboard Columbia, Commander Gibson, of the situation we're in, which is one of a hold at the T-9 minute mark, normally a 10-minute hold. However, weather conditions at this time are not acceptable to determine that we can proceed on to liftoff. We've decided to wait at this time for an improvement in the weather before proceeding on and coming out of this hold period. With the shuttle launch control, we continue in a T-9 minute hold, awaiting an improvement in the weather conditions, which is hoped for at this time and does appear that we will get, in as much as the only unacceptable ceiling at this point is right over the Kennedy Space Center. The cloud cover and ceilings elsewhere in the state are at higher levels and are acceptable, and the wind is such that this system is moving easterly, and we are hopeful that some break in the cloud cover will be coming this way shortly. We do have at least until 7:48 this morning. That's the window that we began with. And launch officials continue to be optimistic that we will have an opportunity during that time frame to lift off on this mission 61C. That was uplinked into the backup flight system erroneously. Was a bad value that we needed to re-uplink a fresh load to the BFS, the backup flight system, and that has occurred. Otherwise, really not tracking any problems whatsoever concerning the vehicle. All systems, shuttle systems are go for launch. We're simply waiting on the launch pad for an improving weather situation that will allow us to go today. Launch control. Holding, we have 25 minutes and 35 seconds remaining in our window, given that we have still 9 minutes of count time necessary. The Cape weather is presently in communication with Launch Director Gene Thomas. The weather forecasters are indicating that conditions are showing definite signs of improvement, that the cloud decks are beginning to show evidence of breaking up, and indeed that they are not very thick. And we're awaiting light conditions that will enable the shuttle train aircraft being flown by weather reconnaissance astronaut John Young. We're awaiting further evaluation from him as to the acceptability of the cover. And another aspect that's being worked at this time is a possible extension of the window. There's some indications that may occur, but we have no definite decision at this time. So at the present, we are continuing to assume and look at only 24 minutes and 17 seconds of window time remaining before we would have to resume the count in order to make a launch today. Once again, repeating the latest information coming to the Launch Control Center from Cape weather forecasters indicate that conditions are beginning to show definite signs of improvement. We're standing by at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. The shuttle vehicle systems are go. Shuttle Launch Director Gene Thomas has just informed the launch team we have confirmed an extension of the launch window. Our launch window now extends until 8:10 Eastern Standard Time. With improving conditions expected, we have extended the launch window to 8:10. At T-minus 9 minutes and holding, this is Shuttle Launch Control. It's 9 minutes and holding. We continue to hold for better weather. And all indications at this time are that nature is going to accommodate us. The cloud ceiling is beginning to break up, and improved conditions are forecasted to be on their way. The trend is definitely for the better. And additionally, we have received an extended window that now lasts until 8:10 Eastern Standard Time. We do continue to have a period between now and then which will be unavailable to us because of a collision avoidance procedure and regulation, which says that you basically do not launch when there is a possibility of a collision with another orbiting spacecraft. In this case, we're talking about the Soviet Soyuz space station, and that blackout period extends for a couple of minutes, beginning at approximately 7:48:45. We do have additional time beyond that, leading up to a close of the window at 8:10. Weather forecasters very optimistic now that conditions will improve sufficiently to allow us to launch today. Part of that decision, again, is largely going to be based on the real-time weather observations by pilot John Young, presently aloft in the shuttle training aircraft, making continuing approaches to the KSC runway to establish what the situation would be for the returning shuttle pilots in the event of a return to launch site abort. All conditions on the orbiter remain green and a go condition. We'll keep you updated on changes in the weather forecast, and as soon as we have some word as to when we may come out of this T-minus 9 minute hold, this is Shuttle Launch Control. Hold at T-minus 9 minutes. We have 41 minutes and 53 seconds remaining in our window today. That window having recently been extended to 8:10 Eastern Standard Time. Weather forecasters are continuing to be optimistic about the clearing of conditions. The extension of the window was made possible by relaxing of some requirements on the part of the RCA community. The bottom line of the extended window is that there will be no degradation to the lifetime of the satellite whatsoever. The change in window time simply affects slightly the aiming parameters that are used to aim the satellite for the apogee kick motor firing. Those parameters, even with the extended window, remain well within specifications, and so the bottom line is that the window extension will have no impact of significance to the satellite at all. Minutes and 28 seconds remaining of available window before we would have to pick up this count. Conditions continue to improve. Weather pilot John Young is about to make an approach to the shuttle landing facility from the north. That would be at runway 15 to determine whether that would be a better return direction than from the south in the event of an RTLS. Latest weather forecast, real-time observations are clouds at 4,500 scattered and 10,000 broken. Conditions are improving. It's continuing to look very promising that we will be resuming the count. We don't know exactly when at this point. The west show clearly that the conditions are improving. We're reevaluating the approach that might be used today to the shuttle landing facility in the event of a return to launch site abort. John Young is presently making an approach from the north to run 15. The situation looked rather bleak quite some time ago, but we did have some promise of clearing conditions in the area as this system is moving eastward. We had cloud ceiling that was unacceptable for launch at the opening of this window. However, conditions are rapidly beginning to improve as that deck breaks up. We have 31 minutes and 20 seconds remaining in the window today before we would have to pick up the count at T-9. Systems on the orbiter are all in good shape. And we're standing by for a go to proceed with the countdown based on weather evaluation. Has given a go to the launch team to resume the count when they're ready. Repeating, we do have a go. John Young has reported we have a clear approach to the shuttle landing facility from the south, runway 33. Weather conditions are continuing to improve. We have a go. Six minutes and 54 seconds remaining of window time. We expect to resume the count at 7:45 a.m. Minus 9 minutes and holding. Lockheed Test Director Jim Toh has informed the flight crew aboard Columbia that we are go. We'll be picking up the count at 7:45 a.m. for a nominal liftoff at 7:54. "30 seconds away from picking up the countdown of Mission 61C. The countdown clock will start in 3 seconds. 2, 1. We're at minus 8 minutes, 57.7. 57 seconds and counting. This is Shuttle Control.
Yeah, start APU press recorders.
RPS verify.
The
LPS, place the firing room.
ground launch sequencer now in command.
Complete. Columbia launch director, Air Ground 1.
Go ahead, launch director.
Okay, we've looked at the weather and it looks real good. We'd like to give you guys a go ahead. We've enjoyed working with you. Look for you back here at KSC in about 6 days.
Well, thank you very much, Gene. We sure have enjoyed working with you and all the other very professional and competent people that we've dealt with down here on the NASA Lockheed team, and it's always a pleasure working with you, and we're looking forward to coming back also.
Yes, sir. You have a good flight. Flight OTC, proceed with the transmission at SPCs.
Launch Director Gene Thomas and the flight crew aboard Columbia exchanging greetings and also wishing each other well, and thank you.
Okay, that's in order.
We're at minus 7 minutes, 48 seconds and counting, all going very well.
OTTPLT AC bus sensors complete.
Copy.
LPD SRO 212.
Go.
You have a final clear to launch.
Thank you, sir.
Superintendent of Range Operations has given Lockheed Test Director Jim Toh a final clearance for launch.
Yeah, let's go.
The ground launch sequencer has started retracting the orbiter crew access arm, which is the walkway used by the astronauts to climb into the vehicle. The arm can be put back in place within about 15 to 20 seconds if an emergency arises, and the crew must evacuate the pad. T-minus 7 minutes and counting. All systems aboard Columbia are a go. Minus 6 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. As we come up on the T-minus 6 minute mark, the orbiter test conductor should be giving the pilot a go to perform the auxiliary power unit pre-start.
Okay. And POT, I'd like to have you perform the APU pre-start, please.
APU pre-start in order.
OTC Don Weinberg has given pilot Bolden a go to perform the APU pre-start. The pilot configuring switches in the cockpit to put the APUs in the ready-to-start configuration. Minus 5 minutes, 50 seconds and counting.
OTCPLT APU pre-start's complete. 3 go talkbacks.
Okay, copy that. HYD, verify 1018.
APU pre-start reported complete.
HYD verified.
Flight OTC, transmit DSM 1500.
Captain, where?
Mission Control now transmitting the signal to start the flight recorders. The 2 recorders will collect measurements of the shuttle system's performance during flight and will be played back after the vehicle is in orbit. Coming up on the 5 minute mark and a go for APU start.
OTC flight recorders are running.
Copy that. PLS go for orbiter APU start. APOT, you have a go to perform the APU start.
Okay, APU start's in work.
Pilot Bolden has been given a go for APU start, reported that in work. The LOX replenish has been terminated and LOX drainback has been initiated at this time.
CDR reconfigure heaters at this time.
CDR, okay. OTCPLT APU start's complete. 3 good systems.
APU start has been reported complete and 3 good systems reported by pilot Bolden. This now limits our unplanned hold capability to 7 minutes if we should run into a problem between now and T-minus 31 seconds. Coming up on the T-minus 4 minute mark. Mark, T-minus 4 minutes and counting.
Sequence 4.
The final purge sequence of the main engines is now underway.
Flight crew, time to close visors.
OTC Don Weinberg has requested the flight crew to close the visors on their launch and entry helmets. Okay. Minus 3 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. The vehicle is now on internal power, running off its onboard fuel cells, fed by ground reactants through the T0 umbilicals. Engine gimbal checks in progress.
Yeah, let's go for ET-LO2 pressurization.
External tank liquid oxygen pressurization has started, and purging of shuttle main engines has been terminated. The shuttle main engines have been placed in their start position. Minus 2 minutes, 40 seconds and counting.
And POT-OTC, clear the caution warning memory and verify no unexpected errors.
Okay, that can work.
Orbiter test conductor Don Weinberg has just asked pilot Bolden to clear the caution warning memory system of the orbiter and verify no unexpected errors. The gaseous oxygen vent arm is being retracted this time from the tip of the external tank.
Caution warning memory clear is complete with no unexpected or unexplained messages.
Okay, copy.
And Bolden reports back to the firing room no unexpected errors in the clearing of the caution warning memory system.
Yeah, let's go for ET-LH2 pressurization.
Minus 1 minute, 50 seconds and counting. Liquid hydrogen replenish has been terminated and LH2 pressurization of flight level is underway. The vehicle is now isolated from ground loading equipment. Minus 1 minute, 38 seconds and counting. At T-minus 1 minute, the ground launch sequencer will verify the shuttle main engines are ready to start. And we're coming up on the T-minus 1 minute mark. T-minus 1 minute and counting. Sound suppression water system is now armed. T-minus 53 seconds and counting. Hydrogen burn igniters have been armed. The igniters will be fired at T-minus 10 seconds. T-minus 38 seconds. Orbiter computers have positioned the vent doors to the launch configuration. Coming up on auto sequence start. Minus 31 seconds.
Yeah, let's go for auto sequence start.
We have a go for auto sequence start. Columbia's general purpose computers now have primary control. T-minus 16 seconds. Everything is go. The orbiter's onboard computers have armed the SRB ignition.
We have cutoff.
We have a cutoff.
GLS safety in progress.
We have a cutoff at T-minus 14 seconds.
Copy that.
Ground launch sequencer spacing is in progress.
Channel 06, GPC computer mode 5 switch to halt.
Okay, taking GPC 5 to halt.
1, 2, and 3 showing purge free. Ignition set ordnance safe. Go for orbiter APU shutdown. No MPS fire detectors tripped.
Procedures being put into effect at this time to shut down the orbiter's APUs. The access arm is being put back into position against the orbiter. We had an unexpected cutoff of the countdown at T-minus 14 seconds.
Go ahead, OTC. Okay, can you verify ready for the APUs to be shut down?
I can verify that, OTC.
Okay. BLT, OTC.
Go ahead, OTC.
Okay, we're ready for APU shutdown.
Okay, APU shutdown's in work.
APU shutdown being put into work. All safety procedures are going smoothly. No indication of any problem. No indication at this time of what caused the premature cutoff of the countdown. Anytime inside of the T-minus 31 second mark when the orbiter's computers are in charge.
Go. Okay. It was a right hand, APU, B, perfect.
A cutoff automatically stops the auto sequence.
First indication we got. Okay. We're looking at others. Understand.
And OTC PLC APU shutdown complete.
Okay, copy that.
APU shutdown has been reported complete.
SPE LTD. SPE. You verify we are not in a GLS abort, but a GLS hold? That's affirmative. We're in a GLS hold, which dictates 18, right? That's correct. Okay. GLS safing is complete.
Ground launch sequencer safing has been reported complete. We are in a GLS hold. We have confirmed we are not in a GLS abort, a ground launch sequencer abort. The ground launch sequencer imposed a hold on the count at approximately T-minus 14 seconds. At this time, we do not understand exactly why that occurred. All systems are safe aboard the orbiter.
Yeah, thank you, DDR OTC. I'd like to have you reconfigure heaters at this time.
Okay, OTC, that's complete.
Okay, copy that. Flight LTD.
LTD flight.
18013, BFS SPC buffer clear, ready for GA9 transition.
That's in work.
All right, sir, let me know when you're ready for transition.
Okay.
MPL and CLOX LTD, 212. MPL.
We verify.
Okay, you verify, both gentlemen verify 014.
This is CLOX, up to 12.
CLOX, verify configured for G9 to go to a G9 configuration.
Yes. Yellow X, verify, say again.
Verify configured for transition to G9.
Not yet.
Not yet. All right, sir, we'll await your call.
Continuing with
LTD
procedures to reconfigure the vehicle and
Affirmative, buffer is clear.
recycle back to the configuration we would have been in at the T-minus 20-minute mark.
Yes, pick up on step 15. 18-15. Good work.
Let's go for main engine start. At the time the GLS affected a cutoff inside the T-minus 31 second mark, the only hold capability for the system is a cutoff of the countdown, which automatically requires a recycle of the T-minus 20-minute mark. The preliminary indication that has been given in the firing room as to the cause for the cutoff was the fact that measurement indicated we exceeded a red line on the right-hand hydraulic power unit of the solid rocket booster.
Okay, and down this format. 144, 129, correction, 191.44, 191.44, okay, copy that. LTD. 028, copy. TBC, LTD. Okay. Okay, TBC, you can do your ET T-minus 20-minute recycle per 21.
Once again, we are looking at least a one-day recycle. No final decision on that yet, but the system would be able to support that, assuming that we are able to understand exactly the problems that occurred this morning and become comfortable with proceeding on. That decision will not be made until later. But at this point, everything is safe aboard the orbiter. We will begin procedures as soon as possible to return the closeout crew to the launch pad to begin assisting the flight crew in getting out of the orbiter. They'll have to put the white room seals back around the orbiter and open a hatch before we can begin the flight crew egress. Absolutely no indication of a need for any kind of emergency egress. All systems have been safed on the orbiter. normal cutoff procedures are being followed here in the firing room.
Go ahead. Yes, SRP, RSS, SNAs are safe and the critical commands are disabled. Okay, copy that. LTD, step 37.
About the problem that caused the premature cutoff of this morning's countdown at approximately T-minus 14 seconds. We did have the ground launch sequencer, the automatic computer program that conducts the countdown during the final 9 minutes, checking a variety of limits as we approach the time which we would have started the main engine. As part of that checkout procedure, the ground launch system computer read a reading on the hydraulic power unit on the right-hand solid rocket booster. Indicated that there was a violation of a red line, a limit that was set on the HPU turbine speed.
Personnel remained OIS 212. All orbiter personnel remain active OIS 212.
A turbine sensor on that hydraulic power unit indicated to the ground launch sequencer an out-of-spec limit, and the ground launch sequencer then ordered a cutoff of the countdown at approximately minus 14 seconds.
CDR NTD on 212.
That was just about 4 seconds prior to the time that ground launch sequencer would have given a go to the orbiter's computers to start the main engine.
Okay, thank you, sir. We've been listening.
Don't have any word yet as to what the turnaround time will be as we begin the troubleshooting of this problem. We know that it will be at a minimum 24 hours. Shuttle launch team engineers and the management will be meeting shortly to go over the problem, which was once again indication that a red line had been exceeded on the operation of the right-hand hydraulic power unit of the solid rocket booster. We'll attempt to understand whether that is a problem that requires some hardware fix, or whether we may be able to understand it to a point where it's deemed not to be a problem and we could proceed on to a liftoff tomorrow. Those questions could be resolved through evaluation of the data.
That's complete. Talkback open.
The closeout crew will be dispatched shortly to begin assisting the 7-member flight crew of 61C and their egress from the crew module.
Manifold isolation, we have 5. Yeah, go ahead, AVD. Give me your CMQC at 151. Okay, CMQC at 151, please.
Copy.
Okay. CGNC, OTC. CGNC. Okay, and your recycle steps, are you complete in sequence 19?
Okay, CC, I guess we're not going again today, right?
Again.
We're not going again today.
Oh, no. No,
Okay.
we're out of the window.
Okay, we're complete with our steps not performed on step 28, 29, 30, 31, and 32.
Okay, thank you. And all the steps on page 707 are complete, right?
That's correct.
Okay, good. PSME OTC. PSME OTC 212.
Go ahead, OTC.
Okay, can you give me the non-performance in your section there? Could you do step 35, 19-35?
30.
Clock to T-minus 20-minute mark. That is the normal procedure we follow in this type of a cutoff of the count. It would not necessarily mean, even if we had a sufficient amount of hold time, that we would be able to rectify the problem and proceed on to a launch. We already know that for today we have no other opportunity for a launch. We've recycled to T-minus 20 minutes. We're facing at least a 24-hour slip, and that depends entirely on the evaluation that is now performed in terms of whether the problem that caused the cutoff is one that we could fly with tomorrow, or whether it's one that requires a hardware fix. To repeat what we understand of the cause of the cutoff that occurred at approximately minus 14 seconds, an instrument in the hydraulic power unit that reads turbine speed indicated to the ground launch sequencer computer that that turbine speed exceeded the red line limit. At this time, the White Room crew has opened up the hatch, and the 61C flight crew members have begun their departure from the orbiter Columbia. Looking somewhat disappointed after a long time and a delay caused by weather, but nonetheless looking healthy. And at this time, obviously anxious to have another opportunity for launch as soon as possible.
VCZ, the Astrovan has been cleared in. Roger, thank you. Yeah, OTCTP 212. Yeah, okay, it's a double there. Okay. OTCTP 212. Yes, sir. I can verify that there was no engine failure or engine aboard. Okay. Yes, sir. He's on his way in inside right now. Okay, copy. OTC, CDR. Okay, CDR and API panel R1. Simply just to get over there. Okay. Where you at? HYD, OTC. HYD, go. Okay, we're going to pick up on that step 3 at this time. Oh, thanks. DGLS. GLS. GLS recycled to T-minus 20 minutes. Configuration is complete at this time. Okay, did you have any non-performs? That's the firm. Which one? Are you back in volume 4? Yes, we'll get with quality on that later. Okay, that'd be fine. OTC CDR, we're about to egress now. I'll have the ass come on as soon as he gets in. Oh, okay.
This is Shuttle Control. The pilot Bolden has exited the spacecraft at this time. Other members of the 61C flight crew have left the ship. They'll be departing shortly to return to their crew quarters at the Operations and Checkout building, and await word, along with the rest of us, as to the determination as to what actions, if any, need to be taken concerning this problem that occurred this morning before we can make another launch attempt. We know at this point at least 24 hours. We would be looking at, most optimistically, at a liftoff tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. We don't know at this point, however, whether there will be some hardware fixes required that could result in a longer delay. Shuttle launch processing team responded swiftly and very properly to the cutoff at approximately T-minus 14 seconds. That post-cutoff procedure went very smoothly. We had no problems. The crew is now out of the orbiter, and this will conclude our commentary for this launch attempt of Mission 61C.
Okay, good morning and welcome to the briefing on the abort we had on the launch of the 61C mission this morning. We'll have with us today to talk to you, going from your left to right, Larry Malloy, who is the manager of the Solid Rocket Booster Project for the Marshall Space Flight Center, Robert Seek, who is the director of shuttle operations for the Kennedy Space Center, and Commander Robert Hoot Gibson, the astronaut commander for the mission, will join us in just a few minutes. We'll start with Bob Seek.
Well, the situation we had was a cutoff of the terminal count sequence at 15 seconds before liftoff. The cutoff was called automatically from the ground by the ground launch sequencer, and the failure detection that it saw was one of the solid rocket booster hydraulic pressurization units, which the ground launch sequencer turns on and monitors the performance of. In the last 30 seconds of launch count, it detected a failure in there and went into an automatic safing routine, which it, of course, is designed to do. It has performed this before for other reasons, having an abort call and terminal count, and all the automatic safing and the manual safing that was conducted after that went strictly by the procedures. Larry will expound more on the technical aspects of the problem. The team, of course, is obviously disappointed, and but for this type of problem, it is a technical problem, and of course, we're going to isolate the problem and fix it and get on with the launch process. The schedule in general is that we will get into the right-hand solid rocket booster after the external tank is safe later on today, and get to the hydraulic pressurization unit, do some troubleshooting, replace that unit, and do some checkout. That will take us up pretty close to Christmas Day. We're absolutely going to take Christmas Day off, and we're going to minimize the team requirements between Christmas and New Year's, which was the holiday period that we had promised the shuttle team. And we're looking to get back up with a full team operation the day after New Year's with a launch no earlier than January 4th. Right now, that's our target launch date.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Malloy.
Okay, there are two hydraulic power units on each one of the SRBs on the left and right for redundancy. The checks that were being made at T-minus 28 seconds, the hydraulic power units are powered up, and approximately T-minus 21 seconds, a speed check is done on the turbine speed on the hydraulic power units. We did pass that speed check. There's another speed check that occurs at T-minus 15 seconds, and there the GLS detected that the turbine was in an overspeed condition on the right-hand booster tilt hydraulic power unit, and then did execute the cut. This is designed to assure that we do not launch without redundancy, because this unit would shut down. We are capable of flying with just one HPU, however.
Okay, we're ready for questions. Please wait for the microphone and give your name and affiliation if I don't call on you that way. We'll start with Craig Cavolt from Aviation Week.
Can you tell how severe your overspeed was?
Yes, the red line cut occurs at 79,200 RPM, and we did see as high as 85,000 RPM on the data.
Bob, on the relaunch, what does a launch on January 4th do to the January 22nd mission, and looking more further downstream, the use of Columbia for an on-time launch of Astro?
Well, it has no impact on the January 22nd mission, because that goes from our new launch pad, which is Pad B. We're looking at the effects downstream. We had a rather lengthy orbiter processing facility flow planned for the turnaround from 102 to meet its next mission, which was March 6th in Astro, and we don't think it'll impact that. Now, we have to look at the other ramifications of the manifest. We had planned on using this mobile launch platform, obviously, for the first interplanetary We wanted to get that back in the vertical assembly building, start the solid rocket booster stacking. So we're assessing that, and also the availability of our orbiter processing facility, which we're sharing with the 3 other orbiters. But right now, we don't see any downstream manifest impacts, but we have to work the details.
Chet Lunner, Gannett News Service.
What is the nominal RPM?
72,000.
And so it can go up to... and
79.2.
That's where the cutoff was.
Mm-hmm.
And what would have happened if this happens in flight? I mean, can you characterize...
You would shut down this HPU and go to 110% power on the other and continue, and that's sufficient for control. The function, of course, of the HPUs is to provide the thrust vector control for the nozzle for steering of the shuttle vehicle. And one HPU is sufficient to do that.
Is this at all related to the mods that Columbia went through?
No, it is not.
Tom Boyle, Tipton Conservative.
Mr. Malloy, you could have flown without this and still had control, but you wouldn't have had any backup if something happened to the other one.
That is correct. Our criteria is to lift off with full redundancy, and that's why we have these checks in there, and it did what it was supposed to do.
Thank you.
Jerry Hannafin, Time Magazine.
Mr. Malloy, picking up again, in lay terms, how would you describe this HPU in terms of size, velocity? You've given us RPMs, I guess. What about pressures involved?
Yeah, well, I guess the best way to describe it, it's a 125 horsepower motor that provides the pressurization for the hydraulic system to control the actuators that swivel the nozzle.
And the PSI involved, sir?
In the gas generator, so I'm not exactly sure what the pressure in the gas generator is off the top of my head. That's where the pressure in the turbine is.
See, and what's the diameter of the turbine in question?
Oh, it's the device is probably 10 to 12 inches.
And what is it made of? Out of what material?
It is a Hastelloy material.
Hastelloy?
Yes.
All right, sir. And temperature, was the temperature a factor in this as it reached the red?
No, it is not.
Only
just
the
speed.
RPM, overspeed. All right, sir. And I'd like to place the question, please, on the PSI that's involved in the system. Would you take it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more down here in the front row, and then we'll be going to the Johnson Space Center and the Marshall Space Flight Center for questions.
John Bisney with United Stations. Mr. Seek, for you, minimizing the work between now and New Year's, is that then driving the launch date? In other words, could you have the vehicle to go before New Year's, but we're at a point in the program now where well-deserved, perhaps, employee convenience sets the launch date back a few days?
The success-oriented, we could have the vehicle ready to launch sometime between Christmas and New Year's, close to New Year's. But the work effort it would take to get there and the trade-off with say a December 30th or 31st launch versus a 4th launch, and you trade that against giving all these people the holidays off, which they've been promised and well-deserved for this year's effort, the trade-off was easy. We went for March 4th. Of course, we're working this with the customers, and their initial response was that they would accept this date.
And if I could ask Mr. Malloy one question, do you have any idea why the turbine speed was so?
No, we have 4 teams of technical specialists looking at that now to identify all of the potential causes. It could be loose wiring or a sluggish control valve and a number of other causes, and we're laying out what all the potential causes are and then looking at all of the data, the pre-launch data that we do have to eliminate or confirm the positive cause.
Sue Butler Hannafin, Time and Space World.
Bob, you told us that it would be good for the morale of the people to have the week off between Christmas and New Year. But aside from that, what is the cost differential of going, say, on the 4th of January versus going over New Year? There must be a double, triple, quadruple time involved. What dollars are we looking at?
Well, we're still looking at the dollars because it depends on the size of the work crews that we would have to be here during the holiday period. A launch count process is an all-up activity for the whole team, not only Johnson, but here at Kennedy. And that's when the costs are maximum, and those are triple time days for the team. So, you know, I hesitate to give a number in terms of dollars. It would probably approach $500,000 a day just for the differential.
Okay, before we go to the Johnson Space Center for questions, Commander Robert Hoot Gibson has joined us. Commander, do you have anything you'd like to say before we open up to questions again?
Well, I guess I could say, and it probably goes without saying, that we're somewhat disappointed not to have launched today. We thought that the Cape did just an excellent job of running a countdown under what might have been some little bit difficult circumstances, moving up the launch by a couple of days as we had done. And I thought they ran everything superbly. Space Shuttle Columbia, which hasn't flown for 2 years, we thought looked just beautiful from what we saw, and I guess it's maybe a little bit ironic that it was not Columbia that got to us on this one, but one of the solid rocket boosters. So we thought it was a very professionally run countdown, a very competent organization all the way throughout. And of course, we were just a little bit surprised when we got the 9-minute recycle at about 15 seconds. We were waiting for the noise of the main engines at that point.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to Houston for questions from there first.
Carlos Bowers, Houston Chronicle. Okay, Mr. Malloy, have there been any previous problems with this type of unit or with this specific unit?
No, there has not. This unit had flown twice previously, and it had gone through all of the ground checkout and hot fire in the acceptance checkout facility in the aft skirt that it is mounted in on the vehicle. We have looked back at those test data and see no indication of this problem, and we have not had on any of the previous flights or ground tests this type of problem.
Okay. For Commander Gibson, what was the reaction from the crew? You just stated that you were somewhat disappointed, but was there anything immediate at the time? Anybody saying anything whatsoever?
Well, Carlos, I guess I probably called it first on board from watching the countdown clock, and really it was just the observation that we had recycled to 9 minutes, that the countdown clock was not proceeding normally at that point, and then we immediately got into the safing procedures and turning the bird back around, getting everything configured, as I say, to put it in a safe condition. So other than the observation that it had happened, we were awful busy.